Hello, everyone. My name is Oleg Kagan, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with LA County Library, and I welcome you to Work Ready, Top 7 Tips for Older Adult Job Seekers. Before we get going with today's event, I'd like to take care of some housekeeping and tell you a little bit about Work Ready. And now I'd like to tell you about the Work Ready program. Work Ready started in December of 2020 with the purpose of helping people get a job and improve their current work situation and plan, of course, for a more sustainable career path. We did that and we're doing that in two ways. One, we're lending out laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots out of 20 and soon to be 27 library locations, breaking down one barrier to applying for a job and getting online training. And number two, we provide virtual events just like this one on a range of work-related topics from the basics like resumes, cover letters, and interviews to deep dives into various careers and other subjects that help you succeed at work. And you can see over 50 of those videos at any time by checking out the work and career playlist on our YouTube channel, which I'm going to post in the chat right now, and which will also be in the follow-up email. The Work Ready program is made possible by the American Rescue Plan. Before we get going with the event, I also want to tell you about next week when we have another great event for you. Next week, Tuesday, May 30th at 11 o'clock, we'll be talking about Work Ready, job scams to avoid. They're out there, scammers trying to prey on unsuspecting job seekers. But if you're prepared, if you know what to watch out for, the red flags, and some examples of what job scams could look like, then you will be partially protected. I'm going to post a link to register for that program next week in the chat right now. So you can click on that, get registered, and this program is free, just like all of our library programs. And if you're interested in learning more about our virtual or in-person programs, you can go to our website at lacountylibrary.org, and on the top right-hand side, click on events. That'll take you to all of our events, in person and virtual, for all ages, kids, teens, adults, older adults. And if you're just interested in virtual programs, you can hover over that link. There'll be a little drop down that says virtual programming. Click that and you'll just get our Zoom events just like this one. All right, and now I would like to introduce our speaker for today. Kerry Hannon is a workplace futurist and strategist on career transitions, entrepreneurship, personal finance, and retirement. She's a frequent TV, radio, and podcast commentator and is a sought-after keynote speaker. Kerry's currently a senior columnist for Yahoo Finance and an on-air expert. She was formerly an expert columnist, opinion writer, and regular contributor to the New York Times, MarketWatch, Forbes, and a personal finance and entrepreneurship expert on the PBS website nextavenue.org. Kerry's the best-selling and award-winning author of 14 books. These include Great Pajama Jobs, Your Complete Guide to Working from Home, Never Too Old to Get Rich, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Starting a Business Midlife. And her latest book is In Control at 50 Plus, How to Succeed in the New World of Work, which was published in April of 2022. Kerry has dedicated her work to making a difference in people's lives, to give them confidence and the tools to succeed personally, professionally, and financially. She offers her audiences and readers can-do expert advice on the best ways to empower themselves now and for the future. And with that, I bring to our virtual stage, Kerry Hannon. Kerry, take it away.
Hey, thanks for the great introduction. I love it. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is one of my favorite topics, and it just keeps getting better for older workers. It is actually a really good time to be in the job market if you're an experienced worker. And I'm going to tell you why. We talked about this session being 7 tips, but I can assure you, you're going to get more than 7. And so I'm going to kick off kind of reviewing the overall scenario, what we're looking at, and some great tips. And then we're going to go to some Q&A, which I really want to hear your questions and how I might be able to give you some insights and tips and all that other good stuff. So to start with, the scenario, kind of, if you look across the job landscape today as we've come out of the pandemic, things have fundamentally changed, right? It's kind of hard to remember back to what we went through, but it was quite a jolt to the workplace during the pandemic period. And it's slowly changing as we emerge from that period in time. But for an experienced worker, the scene has dramatically improved. And here's why. Today, just sheer demographics make the case very viable that employers can no longer afford to ignore having older workers on the job. Just sheer demographics. There are fewer workers coming up. There's been a drop in fertility rates over time. We've seen this coming, but with people living longer, with increased longevity, it has made it possible for people to stay in the workplace longer. And in order to keep a workplace that's vibrant and active, employers need to keep those older workers with them as well. And so it's just sheer, as I said, demographics. And this isn't just in the US, it's globally. So what we're seeing is a new study I just wrote about for Yahoo Finance came out from Transamerica Institute that showed that, and this isn't huge, but 3 in 5 employers now say that they are really paying attention, a great deal of consideration to workers over the age of 50, whereas in the past, this wasn't a question they really responded to quite favorably. So we're seeing this opportunity where they're finally paying attention. They're now saying that they're offering more job training programs for workers in this age group. And not only are they hiring them, they want to retain them, and they absolutely have to. So you're in a good position. There's still a tight labor market right now. So there's very close to 2 jobs for everyone who's unemployed right now. Now, a lot of this is for knowledge workers, I understand, but nonetheless, we are seeing the demand still there. But the caveat is this: you absolutely have to have the skills that are relevant for the position you're looking for. It is non-negotiable. I will say that, I'm in my own situation, just a year and a few months ago, I was hired full-time at Yahoo Finance as a senior columnist. Now, I had been running my own business for a number of years. I wasn't particularly looking to move in-house anywhere. But I think the reason, and the recruiter found me on LinkedIn, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I think the reason why they offered me this position, which is absolutely fantastic and has completely reignited my approach to work, my love of my job, all of those great things, my learning curve. And I think they hired me because I simply could do the job today. They didn't have to do much onboarding. There was no training involved. I could step in. I had all the skills and I could start running. That's what you need to do. That's what you have to, before you step out and, look for that position, make sure that you have something to sell. You have something to market, that you haven't just been sitting back and just expecting things to stay the same, because the job market and the skills needed are changing rapidly. I mean, and we all say this, and the jobs that are being created today are, some of them we never even expected 5 years ago. So, the big fundamental changes, which Oleg and I will get into later, that came out of the workplace that I write about in Control at 50 Plus, which, as I say, this is your time to take control of the kind of work you want to do. But the 5 major changes were: remote work jumped out of the genie out of the bottle, so to speak. Yeah, employers get it now. They know that people can be productive. Performance is great when they work remotely. I don't see that as universally going to be the solution across the board. It's obviously going to be hybrid now. But the fact is, for workers over 50, this is tremendous. And we'll talk more about that. Contract work has surged. Again, this is a plus for workers who want to stay in the job market or want to keep their resume alive while they're looking for a full-time position. Career transition has become, yeah, this happens. It's not no longer for those outliers who are big risk takers. Everyone used to say if you were over 50 and you wanted to pivot to a new career path that you were, they'd say, you sure you have enough runway ahead of you? Can you really do that? But in fact, workers of all ages coming out of the pandemic and during the pandemic made career transitions that are viable and they're successful. And it's no longer a big shock for anyone to change courses, because you could very well have another 15, 20 years doing something completely different. But my hope is that you approach it, which I like to do at this stage in life, as a patchwork quilt. You might do something for 5 or so years, shift to something else, or you might even just do a bunch of things at the same time if you're going to go that contract route that we talked about briefly there. But the fourth trend that came out of this whole period of the pandemic was entrepreneurship. And it had been boiling up and simmering up for workers over 50 prior to the pandemic, but it just took off during the pandemic and continues to. Workers over 50 are starting their own businesses at a super quick clip. And women in particular are. I think this is a huge opportunity. And for many reasons, it's easier than ever to start your own business. And the final piece, the trend that came out of the pandemic, was virtual education and lifelong learning. It's not just, I'm going to go take a little course in maybe history that I wanted to study back in college and I never did. No. It is the opportunities to learn remotely, and to not spend gobs of money to go back for big degree programs, but really have an opportunity to add a certificate, to add a skill, just one particular skill. The number of virtual learning opportunities absolutely exploded during the pandemic, and there are fabulous ones out there. And we can talk more if you want to learn more about that moving forward. But I honestly love every one of these shifts in our workplace. They're so empowering to workers over 50 and job seekers over 50 that we need to harness these and say, okay, so what can I do to pursue some of these great opportunities? And so what I'd like everyone to understand when we're job seeking, it can be kind of it's nerve-wracking. It can be demoralizing. It can be really confidence shattering at times. And it can be absolutely the best thing that you've ever started, because you find yourself in a place that you never expected. And here are the things we talked about at the opening. The overall theme of today's session is looking at just 7 tips I have to remind you, and some of this you probably already know, but these are increasingly important, and particularly at this age when you're job searching. So the 7 tips I want to hit on right now, and then we're going to shift into some Q&A. But the first thing I encourage people who are starting a job search right now, or maybe you've already started and you're kind of muddling through a bit, is do that inner soul searching. And that is something that we all learned to do during the pandemic. And that's why we saw some of those trends of entrepreneurship and career transition coming forward, because we all had a chance to say, what is really important to me? What matters to me? What is my life? You see the brevity of life. We saw the people we knew. We lost loved ones during COVID. We realized, what a certain shock and shift, how unsettling it can be. And it forced us to think about how can we make the most of our time here, have the most impact, and find joy in the work we do. And what you can do is really do that inner soul searching on what is your mission. We often think of companies or nonprofits have missions, but what is yours? I mean, what is it that matters to you that you're looking for in your work life? What matters? And it just is a sentence or two. So, and it's not probably going to just jump off the page for you. So I want you to take a little time and do that. And you might, it might take a couple of cracks at it to find out what matters to you. For example, my mission statement is quite simple, and I've had it for many years, but it's, I will never accept an assignment or any kind of work opportunity if it's not going to have a direct impact on someone's life, if it's not going to improve someone's financial future or their work opportunities. But it all really comes down to financial security in many ways for me. But if I can't find a way that I am going to positively impact someone, I don't do it. And it's just a simple one. But think about that, because that's what you want to align with the employers you're looking for. And again, I encourage people to really take this time to be very discerning about who you are looking to work for. Where do you want to send that resume? I don't believe a scattershot approach works at all at this stage in life. I think we need to narrow it down to the top 10 candidates that we want to work for, that suit our mission. Look at their mission, look at your mission. Do they sync up in some way? Because if you can find companies that you're truly enthusiastic about working for, and by doing that, you look at their job opportunities on their company job boards, you look at all the job boards and see what might be posted up there that from those companies. And then you see what job I'm looking for, what job you're looking for that might align with some opportunities that they have. And you have to be a bit organic there. Don't get caught up in a specific job title. It's really about skills. It's about what you know, what you can do, how you can make their company or their nonprofit better. It's really not about you, but it's about what your skills can do to improve their future. And in turn, it's going to improve yours. But what you do is you narrow it down to 10. Then you go, so your first tip is your mission. Your second tip is your network. And I say, if you're not networking, you're one letter away from not working. It's just that simple. You have got to reach out. Who do you know? Tell everyone you know you're looking. Don't be bashful. We're all in this together. And then what you want to do is those companies you've identified that you'd love to work for, then you figure out, okay, well, who the heck do I know that works there or know someone who works there? And the network is so powerful today because companies hire people they know or people they know. The referral is magic. And it's not that that person's going to get you that job or land you that job, but if they can get you in the door so you can make that case for yourself, it will come down to you. But that simple connection is huge. And what I love to do is, there's so many ways that the network sort of bubbles up for you. But one example, and this ties under another point I might make a bit later, but there's a gentleman I met who was over 50, 60, and he was laid off from his job as a salesperson, and he could not find work in sales. It's a young person's game. He was feeling very much that it was ageism that was holding him back, and he was probably correct. So he loved to sail. That was his hobby. So he went down to, he was a great sailor, and he went down to Longboat Key in Florida and just took a job for the spring teaching sailing at a sailing school. He just needed to decompress. He just needed to step away, and he was able to do that. When he was out sailing, he had a gentleman who he was teaching, who was the CEO at a company in New Jersey. And he told him he was looking for, that he was just doing this temporarily. And the guy said, well, we're looking to hire a project manager. And he said, you should apply for the job. And this guy said, I'm not going to apply for the job. I've never done anything in project management in my life. I don't have any of the background in that I've never studied or gotten the degree, the certificates or what have you, the designations. And he said, well, here's the deal. The CEO told him, I've just spent 3 days with you on this boat, and you know how to get from point A to point B. You know how to navigate in difficult circumstances. And he said, that's what project managers do. I trust that you could do this job. So ultimately, the guy did do this, and he did get hired. Okay, he knew the CEO from what? His network, right? But he also had to prove that he could do it. And now he's been promoted twice. He absolutely loves it. But when we think about what our skills and talents are, it could be something you do from your hobby. So that's another important thing of peeling back the layers. But the second thing, it's using that unexpected network to get you to the next step. So that takes me to the third tip, which is LinkedIn. Okay, this is not an advertisement for LinkedIn, but I am a huge believer in that platform for job seekers. I think they have a great job board. When we go back to point number 2, or tip number 2, your network, who do you know who works there? On LinkedIn, it is so simple to quickly find out who you might know in your contacts that has some relationship to that company. So that's just step 1. And I told you before, the recruiter, my LinkedIn profile seemed to attract a recruiter that landed me a job when I was over 60, which was completely a surprise to me. And that is fantastic. And that the beauty of that is on LinkedIn, you can write in your profile, I don't know. I think you can really share your personality. You can share your experience. You can share PowerPoint projects you've done or presentations. You can have little videos. There's so many ways to market yourself in a creative way on LinkedIn that your resume can't do. Now, your resume, you're still going to need it. In fact, they told me they needed a resume. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't done that in like 20 or 30 years. But I asked my niece, who had just come out of graduate school, to have a look at hers, just so I was sure, even though I write about this all the time. But you do have to do that. It has to be short and sweet, but your LinkedIn profile can really tell your story. And so that's very important to know. So those are, so far we've done mission, we've done network, we've done LinkedIn. The third one ties into that, your car story. What's your car story? So your car story is your challenge, your action, and your result. So any job interview you sit down for, or even on your resume, you really need to kind of find a way on your LinkedIn profile, on your resume, to tuck in these little stories about what your challenge was, how you solved that, what action you took, and the result. And it can be, simple, tight little things, you brought in a project 3 months ahead of time, or, whatever it is, but how you did it. And if you need to have your elevator speech ready on what those are, because that's what people love, a good story. So if you can just boil down 2 or 3 great examples of that, it's going to really help you in an interview. It's going to help you on your resume, and it's going to capture someone's attention. The 5th one we've alluded to already is skills must be relevant. You cannot just expect that someone's going to hire you and train you today. Yeah, employers are saying they've ramped up retraining programs for their older workers in many cases. But in this case, what's going to get you hired is your experience, your knowledge, and your ability to be nimble and stay current and really understand the industry, that you're up to date on what's happening in the industry and what particular skills are relevant there. So again, that's going to lead you back to what I said. One of the fundamental ways the workplace changed coming out of the pandemic is the plethora of virtual learning opportunities where you can just target one skill, one thing. You don't have to take a whole broad program and spend a lot of money to do this. But I think it's essential to make sure, look at those job descriptions when you see the postings. You don't have to have every one of those skills, but you need a lot of them. And the essential ones are not ones that you're going to learn when you get on the job. That's what's going to appeal, is that you can step in and do that job now. The 6th one for job seekers, and again, you probably know this, but I never forget that it's the importance of, when you're job seeking, your friends, your relatives, everyone wants to encourage you, have your back, ask you how it's going. But frankly, they get tired of it, and you don't even want to tell them if it's not going super well. So the 2 things that I have found really have direct results and help people in their job search are having a career support group. If you have some other people who are job seekers, also not looking for the same job you are, the same type of job, but if you can have a handful of people that you can touch base with on a regular basis, once a week, just keep each other accountable. Who did you talk to this week? Where did you send a resume? Have you heard of another job? You can help each other out. You can find ways to say, hey, I heard about this, it might work for you. But most importantly, you're there to encourage each other and to vent if you need to vent, but it builds a sort of confidence. And I think it's critical that we have some mojo at this stage in life and have confidence in what we have to sell and what we have to offer and how we can help an employer move forward in their mission. So again, reaching out to that career search network, that job hunting network, but the part of that, and not everyone can do this. I'm a big believer in having a career coach. If you can even have someone help you a handful of times. It's an unbiased person looking at your resume and peeling back and sort of diving in and seeing things about your background that you take for granted or you no longer focus on as great selling points that make you stand out, make you unique. They may think of a way that you can pivot in another direction that you hadn't thought of. So, you can ask around to find someone who has worked with somebody. There's other outlets. I'm happy to give you some resources, but I personally have used a career coach just in running my own business and my entrepreneurial business, just to keep me motivated and think of ways to stay current and be nimble for transitions. And I think a career coach is beneficial. The final tip is, the seventh tip is, it's not always about pay or title. And we all get hung up on these things. And I know it's critical, especially if the pay is why you're staying in the workplace longer, why you need to be here, is you absolutely need to make ends meet. But I think it's critical to not get too stuck on that, because often just getting in the door can be truly helpful in letting the employer see your skills and you as an asset, and also build your own confidence as well. And the title really is irrelevant at this stage in life, I gotta say. I mean, it's up to you, but I think that's more of an ego thing. So I say, be open to opportunities that seem a little off the path that you've been on all this time. And so so those are your 7 tips, and we're going to dig into any of them you want to and much more. But the final thing I want to encourage people is, I have Kerry's fitness program, and I talk about this a lot. And I gave a presentation here in the past at the library, and I'm sure I talked about it. But Kerry's fitness plan for someone, it's good for everything in life, but it's really important for job seekers over 50. Number one, you must do the best you can be to be financially fit and get lean and mean. If you can, really pay down some of those credit card debts, if that's something that's holding you back, if there's anything, and this takes time, it's a process, but when you're not stuck on a certain pay in order, to meet all the bills, it gives you the flexibility, as we were just talking about in that last tip, to find a job that's meaningful for you and that's going to make a difference in your life and in others' lives. So being financially fit is huge, and it's empowering all in its own right, but it also gives you debt is a dream killer, and money is the biggest stumbling block to finding work that you truly love, or if you want to start your own business, it's just critical. The second piece is physical fitness. So financial fitness, physical fitness is number 2. And ageism, yeah, it's out there. Guess what? It is still alive and well in our culture, in the workplace, no matter what I just said at the top about employers being interested in older workers and considering them. Yes, they are. But tell you the truth, ageism will still be present. So I say, if you get physically fit, people often say to me, should I get Botox? Should I dye my hair? And I'm like, yeah, if it makes you feel confident and good about yourself, by all means. But the most important thing is, if you get physically fit, you have this sort of energy, this can-do spirit, positivity. People want to be around you. They want you on their team. They want to hire you if you're starting your own business, too. They want to be your client. There's something magical about physical fitness. And I don't mean you have to run fast miles or bench press or, no matter what your body shape is, what your level of fitness is today, if you can do just a little something to eat with an eye to nutrition, it gives you energy and get some sort of fitness into your life. The final piece is spiritual fitness. And again, I don't mean like kind of woo-woo religion, that kind of thing, which is fine if that's good for you, whatever. But what I love about spiritual fitness is it's like yoga or Tai Chi, or I walk my dog a couple miles a day. It's where you can go, and particularly in a job search, it's really stressful. So it's where you can go to kind of take a breath, to calm down and center yourself and realize that it's going to be okay, but you need that space, and give yourself permission to go there and have a respite. So, and build it into your life, build it into your daily regime or your weekly regime, whatever's going to work for you. But those 3 pieces, financial, physical, and spiritual fitness, will be tickets. They'll be your tickets. So I'm going to head it back over to you. I'll let you see where we go with the questions here.
Sounds good, Kerry. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I remember you talking about your fitness in the past. So I'm
I'm a
glad that I'm glad
bit-
that you brought it back up because it really is important. The job search isn't just about finding a job. I mean, it's part of your life. So if the other parts of your life are sort of not up to where they should be, that translates in the way you do your interviews, the way you apply yourself. So it's really important. So we did have some questions, but before we get into the questions, a person mentioned that they kind of got lost somewhere in the middle of what the 7 tips were. So,
You want
uh,
me to tell them real quick?
yes, please.
Okay, number one is mission. Have a mission and align with an employer's mission. Network, number two. LinkedIn, number three. Number four is car stories, challenge, action, results.
Mhm,
Number five is skills, relevant. Number six, support group, career coach. And
mhm,
number seven, it's not always about pay and title.
mhm. Okay, good. So that should get those tips, and I'll send those in the follow-up email as well because I was writing those down, and to be honest, I also got lost somewhere in like
I
run
talk
number
fast.
after I got the network, and then you start talking about LinkedIn, and oh, okay, so now it all makes sense.
Yeah, LinkedIn helps with the network. They all are interrelated. We weave them all together.
I have a question about LinkedIn, actually, since you're talking about that. What kind of jobs is LinkedIn good for? What kind of fields? Because I know we've had programs about LinkedIn in the past, and we've always had people ask, do I need to get a LinkedIn account or or not? I mean, is it helpful for each individual person? So what would you say is a kind of a ground rule for whether to get into LinkedIn or not?
Right. I think it's primarily for, and I maybe I'm being too blanket here, but for white collar jobs, for knowledge workers. And if you're thinking, well, should I or shouldn't I have one? Ask someone who does a job similar to yours. Check with
Mhm,
your colleagues or former colleagues and say, do you have a LinkedIn profile? But
mhm,
if you're looking for, these kind of jobs, writing jobs, and I mean, their job board is great because you can really drill down to what you're looking for, and you can get emails every day about job openings with a title that that you're looking for, and you can pick a bunch of different ones, or industry or location. There's lots of ways, or part-time, full-time, contract. But I would say, and you'll see when you go there, they talk about all the different industries, and it's quite broad. But again, it's not going to be necessarily for service jobs as much, or trades jobs, which are all super important jobs. But there are other ways to look for those, I believe, and that again, often with a trade association, or a kind of any association that's affiliated with your field, usually will have a job board of some kind, and you can look to that. But I do think, check with individuals that and who have similar positions that you're looking for, and see if they have one. For my profession as a writer, it's ubiquitous. Everyone has one. But again, I get a little caught up in that. I mean, what's your thought on that?
I think that what you said was actually right on for knowledge workers, people who work in a more so an office environment, operations, things like that. LinkedIn is very helpful. It depends for like things like government jobs, like for instance, if you're talking about like library work, it's unless you're at a director level or administration level, it's not as important. Like if you're trying to apply for a librarian position, for those kind of positions, and that's I think that's general government work, not as useful because recruiters don't, there are not recruiters for those kind of positions. And so it's what it's useful for though is not so much the specific getting the job part, it's the other stuff, it's the networking, because you can run into people who are in those positions. So if you're interested in building that network, and that's I wanted to ask a question about that after. If you're trying to build a network, then there are people doing almost any job on LinkedIn, even if it's not a white collar job or if it's not a knowledge work job, even if it's not an office job, there are people on LinkedIn. There's a few people. And so if you're just trying to build a network, many people on LinkedIn, I mean, the reason they're on LinkedIn is because it's a social network. And so they're open to you contacting them. And so if you send them a nice message saying, hey, I'm interested in an informational interview, then they're more likely to respond on LinkedIn because they can also go and see your profile. So it's not like, you randomly call somebody up, cold call or like email them randomly. You can send them the message and then they can go look at your profile and say, oh, here are your skills. Here's who's contacting me.
That's
So yeah,
that's exactly spot on. And also, employers will do they're going to do their reconnaissance on you. It's not just your resume. They're going to do a Google search and find out everything they can about you. Hiring manager will, from your Facebook page to Instagram to Twitter, any of your social media platforms. And LinkedIn is the trusted source on many of this, and they'll see
Mhm.
who you're connected with, there's a treasure trove of information there about you. And the beauty of it is, unlike a resume, which it's a little harder to change all the time, you can go in and change your LinkedIn profile all the time. You can add things, subtract, you can edit it. It's fun. It's sort of a living, breathing thing. So I like that about it. I also love what you said about, it made me, in my tip number 2, networking,
Mhm.
um, research and is all about doing those informational interviews. And that is perfect. I'm so glad you brought it up, because you're not asking that person for a job, but you're looking for advice. Maybe they may know of something that suits you, or they may help you find out where the opportunities in the field that interests you may be. And people love to talk about their jobs. They love, you heard me, I'm like, blah, blah. I mean, the thing is,
Of
people
course,
want to. So if you give them an opportunity, they want to help you, but it's their time. You're there listening, and you're not trying to sell yourself to them. You want to learn from them. So be like, I picture my little Labrador retriever sitting there staring at me adoringly, waiting for a treat. And that's kind of what you're doing. Have that mindset. But I do think, thank you for bringing that up, because that's a great way to use LinkedIn for networking, for informational interviews.
Mhm. Thanks, Carrie. And then the one other thing about LinkedIn, and then we'll move on because there are definitely questions that are coming in. And that is, I was talking to somebody recently, and she turned me on to this idea of doing research about companies on LinkedIn. And it's actually a really powerful way to understand the organization of a company, like the hierarchy, the kind of people who work there, the kind of skills you might need. So all you have to do is search for a specific company on LinkedIn. And when you click through there, it's just a huge connected database of companies. And you'll see different people who have LinkedIn accounts who work at that company. You'll see the kind of stuff that their PR, whoever runs their LinkedIn account, posts. So what's happening with the company. So if you're trying to prepare for an interview or even prepare an application, you can go through the list of employees at that company and click through and see, oh, they have these skills, these skills, these skills. And then when you're in an interview, you have that, you're armed with that. Oh, I noticed that your company recently did X, Y, and Z. I love that. And here's how it relates to my skills.
That is exactly how to use LinkedIn like a pro. And that's what it takes a little practice, but it can be so, and it's great if you can even find the person who, if you do get to that job interview, look them up, and you might find a common interest, like, oh, they love rescue dogs, or, whatever it is, you have something to talk about that just opens up the gate. And that's fantastic. I do think, another thing to look for, when I talked about, and it just reminded me when you were saying that, we're looking for companies, narrow your search as much as you can so that you're focused, your mission, but you also want to look for companies who are age friendly. And there are, ageism, as I said, is alive and well, but more companies are getting hip to this idea that they need older workers to stay longer and to bring them on board. And by looking at LinkedIn, as you mentioned, they can see, who are there people that look like me here? And it might, and are they highlighting experienced workers, or is it all younger workers? You can go to the company's websites and see, how they choose to market themselves gives you some insight into whether you're going to be comfortable there, or whether they are really appealing that. AARP has a really great list of companies who have signed the pledge to be age friendly. I'm not saying they necessarily do it, but they're definitely aware of it and cognizant, and have said that they're making an effort. So I'm gonna say they are. I don't have all the numbers, and there's a couple of other like that we're seeing come up, that are putting together. There's a new thing I just saw, I can share with everyone afterwards, of someone's compiled a really nice guidebook to companies who are age friendly.
Yeah, I think that would be really good for the folks, and we can send that as and the follow-up email. So let's get to a question here. So we're trying not to get very specific with people's questions because there's very people with many circumstances as part of this class in our audience. But I want to sort of give some background on the situation here. So this person's recently divorced, was a housewife for 26 years, but have to get back into the workforce. How and where do I start? Have an inactive nursing license, but haven't practiced for 26 years, and they're interested in working remotely. So I know you wrote a book on remote work. So I think we should focus on what part of their job search should uh, move towards working remotely and how they can do that.
Well, I love this particular example. I mean, there's healthcare jobs are hot, right? And there's a lot of demand in all different levels. And having had a nursing background, even if you haven't done it in 2 decades, does not mean that you wouldn't find some really fantastic opportunities in the healthcare field that would require, you definitely would need to add some sort of education, some sort of relevant skills, but you already have many in place. You already have the interest, the curiosity, the mission, all of the things that they're looking for. You care. This is an important that you loved your prior career in nursing, if in fact that's true, which I think probably is, but but it could be done remotely because whatever within the healthcare field. So it might not be direct nursing, but it is somehow tangential to that. So I would think that you would find quite a few opportunities in the remote world. And one job site that I like a lot is flexjobs.com, and you can search there and you can get a sense of what within the health industry, what kinds of positions people are. So most of them, it is flexible jobs, true, but almost all of them are remote jobs. So that's what you want to be looking for. But most big job boards today do allow you to search by clicking remote only. And there's a group here in Washington, D.C., where I'm based, that Flex Professionals, that does the same thing. They help pair companies with remote workers. And so that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's a lot more ubiquitous now after the pandemic that many companies have gone remote and stayed that way. And so when you look at websites like Indeed, like you mentioned, that clicking remote actually brings up a whole bunch of stuff. So it's no longer a situation where it's like, oh, it's like few and far between. There's many options with remote work.
And have some moxie. Don't feel that just because you've been stepped away from the workplace. Find ways that the work that you were doing at home for running your household and all these other great things that you children, what I'm not sure the specifics, but look to this. What was this? What skill set was I using there? Was I a project manager? Was I a financial manager? Was I, there's many things that we need to redeploy how we talk about the work we were doing and what we have to offer based on that experience, because everything you did adds to your wheelhouse and makes you appealing and a great, candidate for a job, but you have to repackage it.
So we mentioned the term knowledge worker earlier. Somebody was asking, and this is a really fantastic question. I'm glad they brought the question up and didn't just wonder. What is a knowledge worker?
There's lots of definitions, but to me, and I'm going to bounce it to you for yours, mine is a knowledge worker is somebody who does not depend on having to, like in a service job, you're in a retail business, you're actively selling, you're on the floor, you're making consumer direct connection, whether it's online or in person, but it's usually something that relies on an interaction, whereas a knowledge worker is often based on moving data around by using words in my case, but it's also taking things that are not necessarily require me to be present physically doing them in order for a service to be performed. There's much more in-depth description, but that's sort of a rough outline to me, and I would toss it to you for maybe a more concise one.
I think that's about right. Peter Drucker, the management guru, was the one who coined the term, and it's really more concise would be like office jobs. That's generally it's a very general definition of what a knowledge worker. People who work in an office, like the laptop class, those are knowledge workers. So let's move on to the next question. Uh, can you recommend a good career coach that won't break the bank? That's a good question. I'm not going to put you on the spot to do that though. What I will ask though is how would one find a good career coach that might fit with them financially and also with their skills and expertise?
Yeah, I often encourage people to ask around people they know if they've worked with anybody in their community. And again, in today's world, it doesn't have to be somebody down the street or in your city. Most coaches will work with you virtually, by phone or by, as we're talking right now. So it opens up the window to lots of individuals that can come in. Most people will give you a free session, and you get a sense of whether you have a rapport, a connection with them. Some people align directly with certain industries, so your industry association may have some people there. Again, LinkedIn offers a matching service as well on there. I think AARP now has career coaching that they help match coaches with individuals. There are also like there's a whole association of career counselors that you can look at for you can search in different things and see what attributes you're looking for. But also I have found a nice way is where you live in your community. Often you'll find at a community college career coaches offering classes in job search, and or even in your town, if there's a job search webinar or a session, a seminar of some kind, often there's a career coach on the panel or a career coach presenting. It's worth reaching out to them and seeing, so that's one way. And if you can sort of build a relationship, or if you attend a class, a small class, because usually they're quite small seminar types, you can see if that person would be somebody you want to work with as an individual. And it doesn't have to break the bank, honestly, if you could sign up for just 2 or 3 sessions. And if you've been laid off from a company, often your HR department there has access to career coaches that they provide for. Oh, and another great place, sorry, the Department of Labor's job centers often have, they have career coaches associated with them, and there's increasingly offering more of that.
So, sorry, I had two conflicting thoughts in my head, but regarding the job coach, one way to think about getting a job coach who might not break the bank is somebody who's just starting out as a job coach. So somebody who's transitioning into that had extensive experience in X, Y, Z field and had an illustrious career, and now they want to help people. And if they're just starting out, they may be charging more affordable rates as they build up their clientele. So, but it's everything that you said, Kerry, to reach out to the people around you and ask them. That's the only way that you're going to find people. So, are companies willing to hire somebody that's just coming out of college learning computer office technology, but doesn't have the experience yet, just the skills?
Isn't it funny? Because there's ageism at both ends, right? There's ageism in your 20s, and there's ageism in your 50s and 60s and 70s. So I think what I'm seeing a lot of, they're definitely willing to hire because they need people who can do these jobs. If you've got the skills, definitely the opportunities are there. What I see a lot of is that companies are still chicken on some level. If you don't have the 5 years or the 10 years of experience that they billboard. So they'll often start you off in a contract position. And so going back to one of the big surging trends out of the pandemic is contract jobs, which are fantastic for younger workers getting into the job market to build that resume in order to, have point back and say, yes, I have the experience. But again, the sort of drawbacks to these contract jobs are you don't get the benefits. And if you want to have an employer provided retirement plan or health insurance, depending on your age there in your 20s, that can be a problem because you've got to plan for how to do that yourself. And but again, there's a lot of opportunity in the contract area, whereas not as much in the full-time, although there are those ramp-on programs, the internships, the fellowships that kind of get you in the door.
Sounds good. And then harkening back to LinkedIn, somebody mentions that they met a person working the cash register at the mall who said she was poached by a recruiter from another store at the mall based on her LinkedIn profile.
Love it.
I
I
mean,
love
I'm pleased to hear that.
it. So it
Uh,
can be any profession. Okay.
yeah,
So it's
we
just,
stand corrected.
yes, thank you. I think that's beautiful because I just think LinkedIn is great. And but I also, I'll tell you, even on Facebook, I use it. I don't use it, clean your all those things up. You don't want to have crazy stuff up there. But I have a network of people I worked with starting in my 20s that were journalists and writers. And we're friends on LinkedIn, and we actually still help each other out because we have that network. If we hear of a job opportunity and someone's looking, and often, or even on LinkedIn, a friend of mine recently lost her job and she's late 50s. And she wrote a LinkedIn note that went out to her network of LinkedIn contacts and said, hey, this is what happened to me. If you know of anything, and we all jumped in, and a private message, PM me. She wanted, she didn't want everything thrown up there, but she said, let me know. And that's a way to reach out to people, that it's quite accepted now.
Right. And like you said, people are willing to help if you have all those people in your network, people who, and many people would like to be the connector. They want to bring somebody great to their job or to their workplace. So it's not as sort of out there or crazy or braggy or whatever it is, as maybe it was at some point. So we had a question here about so, I mean, I think we had a question about navigating ageism and intersectionality in the job search, but I feel like you've been covering that this whole time. Is there something that, when thinking about ageism that you want to share, how
Well,
to sort of overcome it or think
yeah,
about it differently?
yeah, I would say I think there's a great deal more awareness, and people are talking about it now, right? People didn't used to talk about it, and there's a wonderful writer and advocate for this, Ashton Applewhite, who wrote a book called "This Chair Rocks," and she is out there just shaking the trees for employers. So I think the conversation is going. What I love to tell, my favorite tip is to, when you're, it sounds silly, but when you're in an interview situation, whether it's on the phone, virtual, in the office, try to use the word curious. And it's, people love, and not like crazy use it, but or find ways to. What the word curious does is it just triggers in the person who's interviewing you the idea that you're open to learning new ways of doing things. You're open to learning. That's always been a big knock on older workers, is that we're set in our ways, that we don't want to do things differently. When you say you're curious, that's a really powerful word. So if there's a way to just demonstrate that, but think about the language you use. Be careful not to say in interviews that you date yourself. Stay present. I mean, yes, you're talking about your experience, but you don't have to say 20 years ago. You say that, so be cognizant of how you bring the ageist views upon yourself, because we also create that by talking about it. And again, I mean, I was recently in a situation where I went up to the offices at Yahoo in New York, and one of my friends that I worked with back at US News and World Report many years ago was there, and he's a big star there. And they're like, "Oh, Kerry, how do you know him?" And I was like, I wanted to say I've known him for 3 decades, but then I didn't. I said, "Oh, we've been friends for a long time." Because it's just that simple. It just positioned me, because where I work now, my editor is absolutely fabulous. I adore her, and she's about 2 decades younger than me. And it's just reignited the way I see my work, the way she sees things from a different lens than the one I had grown accustomed to. So I just think of it as just a bonus, because probably you're going to end up working for somebody younger than you, or
Mhm.
reporting to them.
So you mentioned the CAR framework earlier, challenge, action, result. Where do you apply that? Is it in an interview, in a cover letter, uh, in an elevator?
It can be used in lots of different ways and lots of formats, but that's Those are the basic elements of what it is you need to convey. And so you can quickly do those in a resume without, you don't get hung up on the years and the title as much as you don't say responsible, blah, 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 blah. You say, brought in, such and such new business, 5 new clients in 6 months, or, whatever it might be, quickly by actively marketing on such and such a platform. I don't know what it would be for your field, but look closely when you look even at people's LinkedIn profiles, because that's public, you can see instead of their resume. Well, look at the LinkedIn profiles and you'll see people embed these in their, when they're doing their work history. You'll see those just little snippets of what they achieved and what the issue was, what they achieved and how they did it. But it's pretty tight, but then you expand on it when you get an opportunity to sit down.
Here's a question that strikes to me, even though I'm on here all the time, waving my hands and doing interviews for people. What if I feel too shy to network, or I don't have a mindset to network? How do you kind of overcome that? How do you develop that chutzpah necessary to reach out to people who, reach out to perfect strangers?
Yeah, you got to do one thing every day that scares you, right? You just got to. You got to, and just make yourself do one. You don't have to call 3 people. You don't have to email 3 people. Pick one person. If you could do one person a day or one person, a week, even if that's all you can manage. But you must, visualize in your head, what's the worst thing that can happen? They don't return your email. They don't want to talk to you. Well, don't take it personally. It's not about you. You move on. But I honestly, it's truly is hard if you're an introvert and if you're shy, all of those things, it's reality. But if you can push through it, just set yourself small baby steps, really little goals, and it will build on itself. And always ask that person, particularly those informational interviews that you were great enough to bring up, is that who else should I talk to? And then that opens the door, because then it's not you asking. You'll say, well, Susan, whatever, suggested I reach out to you, that you might be able to offer me some insight into X. So you're deferring it away from you to somebody else. And that kind of relieves that anxiety, doesn't it?
It's like social proof. It's like a letter of introduction.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, I think that's one thing, but try to do one thing at a time. And the other mindset thing I would say is, for people who feel like they've lost their mojo a little bit and maybe are discouraged, go back and look at some old performance reviews if you have them, and it'll remind you of the things that others have said you do really well. And even ask friends and family what it is that because we all forget what we're great at because we take it for granted. But those old performance reviews, if you happen to have them, is one easy confidence booster.
Sounds good. And one thing that I will say is that when I'm on the receiving end of informational interview requests, and I have been, and probably you have too, Kerry, when I see those, it feels like such an honor. It feels like such an honor that somebody thinks that I have information that will help them. Like little old me has information that's going to help them. And so whenever I get those, and I give out my card to people at various professional events and everything. And, whenever I say, please email me, I always mean it. And I always feel so complimented that somebody does. And so if you're out there and you're afraid to press that send button or even compose that email to somebody, know that for the most part, I mean, if I suppose if they're a reasonable person, then they're going to feel complimented that somebody is reaching out to them because of their expertise and somebody wants to learn more from them. And so even if it doesn't come together, even if they don't have time, many people will feel complimented by that. So you're doing them a favor. I mean, you're making them feel good by asking.
I think that's true. And just know the rules of the road. Keep it short. Don't ask for too much time. Can I have 15 minutes? You're not asking for an hour. So, and on whatever platform, what would be, if they do agree, so how would you like, should we do a phone call? Do you want to do a Zoom? Whatever they want, make it happen on their terms, what's going to be happening, and write down your questions. No, so you don't waste anyone's time. Allow the fluidity for it to go different directions, but be very specific about what you want to learn from them, so that you don't so it is a productive opportunity to learn about them and their industry and who else you should talk to.
That makes sense. And then moving to a slightly different direction, we had a few questions that came in where people talk about their various experiences, and many of them have had they've had jobs, they've been unemployed for a while, they've done a variety of trainings over a course of many years, and they're at the point now where they feel like giving up, where they've been applying and they're just nothing seems to be getting through. So what kind of inspiration, what's maybe like one or two things that they can do to try to get back into the groove? Um, if it seems like nothing is, they're talking about the 7 tips, they've kind of they feel like they've exhausted them. Um,
So all it takes is one, right? It just, all
and
it takes.
it's so hard to hear, but
Never
it's
know
true.
where that one is gonna come. Here's what I do, and I think it works. Get out of your head and get into the world. Go and volunteer somewhere. And now that we're out of the pandemic, we can do that. Yeah, if you want to do it virtually, fine, but it's mostly great if you can actually go volunteer for some organization whose mission you believe in, and not, I mean, really skill-based volunteer work in a way that you can use those skills, you different variety of trainings you have to really benefit someone else. First of all, it feels good. Second of all, you absolutely never know who you're going to meet, who might know of something for you. There might be an opportunity right there at that nonprofit. You don't know, but what it does is it pushes you away from that computer screen, from that endless going down that rabbit hole, and say, okay, I've done this for today. You've checked off what your to do for that day was, but get out and do something. And I think that is super helpful. There are also a variety of ways you can moonlight if it's something, and not, apprentice somewhere. These are a little bit harder to do, but if say you're interested in doing retail or making chocolates or something, you can volunteer to help out, somewhere. And but what it does is it keeps even you can put that on your resume as something that you're doing, whatever it is that you're active. So if there's an association you're involved with, if it's just a cause you care about, just go do it. The people are always looking for an extra hand.
Mhm. There's a specific question. I've worked in the entertainment industry all of my career. I've been checking the culture at every company I apply for, and only 1 to 5% are my age, 60. I've been looking for over a year with no luck after my video interview. Usually the interview is 30 years younger than I am. How do I counteract this?
Yeah, isn't that the truth, man? I hate hearing that. But especially in the entertainment industry, again, the conversation is coming forward in that industry in particular, but I know it's gotten a bad rap on many different levels of the internet. I'm using it sort of a broad term, but the best thing I can say is, bring your best self forward there. It's really showing your understanding of the job, the industry, and always turning it back to not about you, but about them, how your experience is going to help in whatever that particular job needs to have done to forward the company's mission. So there's no easy task there. And I must say, this is where the network comes in. This is where if somebody can give you a leg up and help you get in the door there. But I honestly it's not just my situation of getting hired. I have so many stories coming out of the pandemic of people 60 and above who are finding jobs, even in the entertainment industry, as editors, as producers, for documentaries, for local television stations, for PBS stations. There's a demand for skilled workers and knowledge workers in these areas. So you may go in as a contractor that it develops. And a couple of people I know, that's what happened. They were hired as contractors and they brought them in as full-time employees after 6 months.
Sounds good, Carrie. And I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. So here's one question, and this is related to the question that I asked earlier, where people feel like they're sort of at the end of the rope, where they tried everything, they can't seem to break through. Uh, how do you sort of expand your job search in the sense like you have certain skills, you've done certain jobs. How do you look for other jobs that you might be open for, that you might be able to tackle, if even if you don't have experience specifically in that area? Like how do you, I guess, how do you expand your field?
Yeah, because the thing is, you can. I mean, redeploying skills is the name of the game. So many of what things that we do, you can easily pivot and take those to a different industry. So it's really having a true understanding of your value, believing in your value, knowing that core skill set that you can pivot and redeploy to another area, and what area might interest you. Because if there's a field that's always been kind of intriguing to you, look over there, start looking for jobs in that industry. And that might line up. And I think you can do searches that might help you on some of these just for fun on some of the job boards, like peg some of them with the skill set you have and see how it might line up for you in the different industries. But it's not the reach it used to be. I mean, as I said, all age groups coming out of the pandemic, the numbers are quite strong who made these career transitions, redeploying skills into other industries, because there's so many new industries leaving us, industries arriving, that you need to be nimble and open. And if you can have that excitement for it, it's hard to do at this point, I understand, but to try to get enthusiastic about, it'd be really interesting to work in this industry, and then try to figure out how, your project management skills or your data analytics skills might work over there. Or as a writer, there's so many, if you can communicate, my gosh, that's like a ticket to ride in so many industries, because you can make that work, whether you're, great written communications, oral communications, visual things, any communication is, some of these things are central to every single industry.
Indeed, and there are also websites like ONET, and I'll put that in the, I'm going to
That's
put a link to that, that where you can look and see what skills you have and what industries it might apply to. So you don't have to, you don't have to go into it kind of blind. There are actually resources that can help you besides an action, besides like a job coach, resources that can help you find alternative career paths. Somebody wrote, I have a feeling that AI will take over some of our jobs. Probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean it, but that's not a bad thing. That doesn't have to be a bad thing, right?
doesn't have to be a bad thing, but the key thing is to stay current, like to stay enthusiastic about learning about, because if you continue your lifelong learning process, you're ready for this. You have resilience. You can handle the AI coming in and creating, taking some things away, but creating new opportunities as well, and new types of jobs emerging that we can't even imagine right now. But it all comes down to having this willingness to be a student, be willing to be a beginner again, because that's what the whole rhythm of life is about. You're a beginner and then you become an expert, and that's what learning is all about. You're a student, then you become knowledgeable, and then you become so it really builds that inner core. It's a great way to build the muscle of resilience, which is what is really imperative in today's jobs market, with AI just coming in, and it's going to be it'll definitely impact all of our work, and our goal is to find out how can we take advantage of it.
So anyway, they added on writing jobs, and I've got to say, as a writer, and you're a writer too, Kerry, that while AI may take some writing jobs, who's going to be writing the prompts for the AI? It's going to be writers.
Yeah, and I think there's just this human element that it's not going to ever be able to replicate exactly, to bring the depth of something. I see it, certain kinds of writing, it's going to absolutely be the resource to go to, but there's so many where the human element is still necessary.
Mhm. And necessary and beneficial.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kerry, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. Even though I'm not an older adult job seeker, I always learn something when you're on with us. And I hope that the folks out there did as well. We really appreciate all of your questions and then sticking with us, and Kerry, your expertise.
Well,
And
can I add one thing?
of
Anyone,
course,
I'm perfectly open to having anyone who wants to reach out to me. I will respond. So I love helping people. So I think it's really important to know people have your back.
and I'll post a link to a link to your LinkedIn, Kerry, in the follow-up email so people can add you.
Perfect. Perfect.
And then one last thing, we do have a post-event survey that I always humbly ask for folks to fill out. It's a very short survey, but it gives us a lot of information about how you felt about this program, how we could do better, what we did well, and then what you're interested in moving forward. When we come up with programs for this Work Ready program, we want it to be responsive to what our audience needs. So I'm going to post a link to that survey, and it'll also come up when I close the Zoom session. So if you could take just 2 minutes to fill out that survey, it would be very much appreciated. And with that, hope to see everybody next week, and good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.